So behind me is a 2012 F150. It's a really pretty blue color. It's a very nice truck. Check it out. For a Michigan truck, it's solid. The issue with this is something's kind of hanging up. When you put it in drive, it doesn't really want to roll forward. Put it in reverse, same way. So Alex and I got to get it inside and we got to figure out what's going on. Is it the brakes hanging up? Is something else going on? What's the deal? There you go. That right there, that's what we got to figure out. It's binding. Something's clamping down and not letting loose like it should. Especially once the truck's warm. There you go. A little touch of the brake and it really does it. So I think the first order of business is going to be to get some wheels off it. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. We got the chromey lug nut caps. They're going to be a big problem here. There we go. Okay, let's move. Is anybody taking bets on what's going on with this thing? Do you think it's the pins? Is it the caliper maybe? The pins, the caliper, the hardware. Something is definitely sticking here. I can feel it. It doesn't look like it's the pins. Oh, it's the hardware. It's the pads themselves. As I'm sure everyone is aware, but if you're not, this is an important lesson. These pads have to freely move on the hardware. I can't pull them off with my fingers right now, and that's no good. When the caliper compresses down on those pads to brake, and then you release the brake, you should have enough room to release tension. And they don't. They're not moving at all. So that's where our problem's at. Alex has got me a screwdriver. We'll pry these off. What's your experience with this, Ben? It seems like a lot of aftermarket pads now. Something's going on with their dies or whatever when they make them. Sometimes they're a little bit too big, it seems. Even if there's no rust on the bracket, the hardware is brand new. They just don't want to fit and slide. Alex spends countless hours like trying to solve that. Each time we do brakes, he's like filing and cleaning and trying to make sure that they move perfectly smooth. So the pins are good. Parking brake's not hung up. It was definitely the pads themselves. And they look okay as far as rear brake pads. I don't think we're going to replace them just yet, but we'll have to clean them up. To make things easier, we might as well just take the bracket off, and that way we can work on the bracket. We'll take the hardware off, make sure that's clean. We'll clean the hardware and we'll get it assembled and show you when it's done properly, these will slide. The rotors on the inside are a little crusty. So we'll move all this to Alex on the tool cart. So he's going to try to remove the hardware. So this is kind of what we're dealing with. You can see here that Ford's coated it and there's rust starting underneath that coating. See it there too. So now this surface where the hardware goes is thicker, probably by thousandths of an inch, not much. And it causes the hardware to tighten up on the pads, and then the pads won't release. You can see it's peeling off and there's rust underneath it. So Alex is removing the hardware and now he's going to clean up the surfaces where the hardware goes. Try and clean all the rust and everything out of it so that the hardware will sit perfectly flat. As you can see, the hardware is still in good shape. There's just a little bit of rust in there we'll have to clean off. And there's a little bit built up underneath. So here's what we wound up with after Alex has cleaned it. So there's no more flaky rust on the caliper bracket that'll cause the hardware to expand. He's got it all cleaned. Same thing we did to the other side. That's really important that this area is clean and free of rust, or it causes the problems that we saw when we pulled it in here. So if you're doing your brakes, make sure that you clean these surfaces, whatever it takes. File, wire, brush, you know, a roll lock, whatever you got to get in there to get that surface clean. Save you a lot of headache later on. Something else you should probably check while you're doing this and you're cleaning up the hardware and the brake pads. Make sure that your caliper piston will collapse. Shouldn't take a lot of pressure and that piston should move in. Another note, some newer vehicles require that you put, with the scan tool, you put the brakes into like service mode, or you'll damage the caliper or the system. This one doesn't require that, but keep that in mind as we move forward with new designs and technology. It won't be as easy as it used to be. So that piston's okay, it moved just fine. So here's what we've got. You can see now, with little to no effort, I can move these on the hardware. Let's do this bottom one. That's how it should move. So that was the whole problem with it. There's a big debate on lubing the contact points. Let us know in the comments what you think. Do you use lube on the pad to hardware or not? They don't come with it from the factory. I used to do it all the time. I've recently stopped. Haven't had a bunch of comebacks for noise or anything, but we would like your input about lubing the hardware. So we'll get this reassembled. Something else I should mention is when you're doing brakes yourself and you compress these pistons, make sure before you put the vehicle in gear that you pump the brakes to expand those pistons back out to the pads. Otherwise, you won't have any brake. The first time you push the pedal down, it's going all the way to the floor and off goes your vehicle. Quick funny story, a friend of mine helped a dude move, and in exchange for helping him move to a new house, the guy did his brakes. Brand new house, they do the brakes, cars facing the back of the garage. I'm sure you can see where this is going. Get the brakes all done. He puts it in drive instead of reverse for whatever reason. Why wouldn't you put it in reverse facing out? And it drives right through the back of the brand new garage. It was hilarious. I wasn't there to see it, but I saw the aftermath and it was awesome. So don't do that. All right, we've got the brakes cleaned up, the hardware cleaned up as we showed you. Now we're gonna jump in and see how it does when we let off the brake off idle. It should idle right along with no issue. We'll see. I wonder if the front's hung up. We did the back, the calipers compressed, that was okay. Cleaned up the hardware, everything's good on the back, but we do have an issue in the front, and I'll show you what it is now. I've got the caliper tool set up here to try and compress it, and as I squeeze it, it will not compress. We're gonna release the pressure from it. We'll take our pad out of here. What we're gonna do is crack this bleeder loose, hopefully. You gotta be careful, sometimes these can break off. We've got our bleeder open. I'm a little bit shocked there's no fluid coming out. There is not. So if this line is the issue, we should be able to compress it relatively easy with the bleeder open. Let's give it a shot and see. Oh yeah, there's no issue compressing it with the bleeder open. I'm gonna close the bleeder. There we go. Once we close that bleeder, it won't compress at all. Now, I've tried to stand it up even, get that line as straight as possible, and it will not compress. It looks like where we're at is we need to replace these front lines. Sometimes they deteriorate inside. If somebody's pinched it with a pair of vice grips, even if it's protected, they pinched it closed at some point when they were changing a caliper or something, that can cause an issue. Alex and I have never had the brakes apart on this vehicle, so here we are sorting this out. I think we need these two lines on the front. The calipers just will not compress. That's where we're at. So rather than guess at what's going on, I went ahead after we opened the bleeder and it compressed. I opened the line here and you can see it still doesn't want to compress. Looks like what's happened is right here, this clamp that holds the brake line, it rusts inside there and actually squeezes on the line over time. You can see more of it there. So we're gonna get two new lines coming, one for each side, and we'll get them on and I'll show you the result. We've got the new brake line installed. We're gonna have Alex press the brake down. We're gonna expand this caliper some, and we're gonna see how it compresses now that we've replaced that line. So go ahead, Alex, you can pump it. Yeah, see how it's coming out now, and before when he was doing it, it wasn't. We had blockage in that line. Okay, Alex, that's good. Now I'm going to compress it with our caliper tool, and it compresses nice and easy. There's no restriction there. That's exactly how it should be. So that's our new line. I know it's twisted because I have the caliper upside down. We'll spray all this off with brake clean, and then we'll have Alex pump the brake again to make sure that there's no leaks there. I tighten that down. One word of advice I can give is make sure that you don't cross thread this. if it'll spin with your fingers, try and tighten it as far as you can go with your fingers before you put a wrench on it. And that way you're sure it's not cross-threaded. The ones we got are labeled. This is the right side. And that's it. That was the problem. The brake hoses were blocking the fluid flow. And I'll show you why right now. If you can see where the hose travels through this clamp right there, it's not really squeezing much on the hose. That's the new one, obviously. Now check this out. I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but because this has rusted on the inside, it's squeezed off this hose. As the rust has built up, much like the brake hardware, it's slowly squeezed this hose so that fluid can't freely flow back and forth. So we're gonna finish the other side, and then we'll check back in with you when we move it in and out of the garage. Oh yeah, that's how it should be. It shouldn't have any trouble creeping forward when you let off the gas. Yeah, there she goes. Let's try it in reverse and see how it does. Let's see if it'll just back. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's way different. I gotta get on the brake. This is a nice truck, man. I could lie to you and say like, oh, I'm not a big Ford guy, but I've got two of them right there. I got a green one and a white one. And they both need attention. Thinking about asking the YouTube community for help with my Mustang, because I've been over it for almost a year. I guess it developed a problem. I tried to sort it out, got busy with a move of property, and then now it just sits, and that's not good for anything, as we all know. Overall, it's doing really good. Those brake hoses, you gotta keep an eye on those, especially here in the Rust Belt, like in Michigan or anywhere where you guys have salt like we do. That thing rusts and closes in on the hose, pinches it off. And I believe what happened in the front drivers of this F-150, because it closed it off and those pads stayed so tight and got so hot, it overheated the rotor and caused it to delaminate like that. So we wound up with brakes and rotors as well on the front. The back is fine. The pedal was really stiff when we first got it. I noticed pulling it into the shop there was no give in the pedal at all, and I kind of knew something was up. I was thinking it was probably just the hardware. As you saw, it wasn't. We got her squared away now though, and it's braking really nice. It's not noisy or anything. I think that she'll be really happy when she gets it back. We'll find out. So hey, thanks for watching.